Hello, XRP holders. Buckle up because today is wild. Pull up your charts real quick. XRP is absolutely dominating the top 10 right now. While everything else is barely moving, maybe crawling up 1 or 2% if we're being generous, XRP just shot up over 5% in the last 24 hours. It's sitting there at number 1 like a boss. Now look, I know there's a mountain of news and developments we could talk about, but here's what I want to focus on today. The actual market action. I've got insights from 8 different chart analysts who are breaking down XRP right now. One of them is even calling for a $15 target. Get this though, they're saying this is the final expansion wave. Translation, the biggest gains are still ahead of us. And check the timing. The macro picture is cooperating perfectly. New all-time highs are popping up left and right. Everything is lining up. This is textbook setup for what we usually see at the end of a crypto cycle. That insane parabolic move that just melts everyone's brain. Here's the deal. Historically, crypto cycles end with altcoins going absolutely bonkers. If that doesn't happen this time around, we're in uncharted territory. This would be the first time things played out completely differently. Those words, by the way, they get said at literally every major cycle peak. We're talking 16 years of crypto doing the exact same dance over and over again. For it to suddenly stop now, that would require humans to just spontaneously rewire their brains and behave totally differently for absolutely no reason. Yeah, not happening. What's blowing my mind though is how scared everyone still is. Like genuinely terrified people everywhere, even after watching what just played out today. Maybe today's action is starting to wake people up a little. Who knows? Here's the thing though. I can't see into the future. Not even close. I'm literally just a random person making videos on the internet. No finance degree, no fancy credentials. I'm sitting here in the same position as everyone watching this, just someone who finds this stuff fascinating to talk about. Where do I stand? I'm firmly in the camp that says yes, one more big explosive rally is coming. But hey, let me keep it real with you. There are some smart analysts I pay attention to who are pointing out that we might hit a rough patch in the short term before that rally kicks in. Most of the people I follow aren't worried about that, but even the optimistic ones will admit, yeah, we could see some weakness first before pushing higher. There's literally one person I track who's adamant that nope, bear market is basically locked in at this point. Quick disclaimer before we continue, I know absolutely nothing about professional finance. This isn't financial advice in any way, and seriously, don't buy or sell based on my rambling. Right now, it's Friday, October 24th, 2025. XRP is at $2.51. Bitcoin sitting at $110,931. And here's the catalyst that got the whole market fired up today. Here's what CNBC is reporting. Inflation rate hit 3% in September, lower than expected. Long-awaited CPI report shows. So let me break down their bullet points for you because honestly, that's all you really need to know. The Consumer Price Index showed a 0.3% increase on the month, putting the annual inflation rate at 3%, both lower than expected. And yeah, the markets are definitely happy about that. Now, if you take out food and energy, core CPI came in at 0.2% monthly and 3% annually, which also beat expectations. Here's where it gets interesting though. The Bureau of Labor Statistics actually put this out specifically because the Social Security Administration needs it to calculate cost of living adjustments for benefit checks. Everything else? The federal government suspended all other data stuff during the shutdown. That's literally the only reason we're seeing this report right now. Look, I'm pretty confident this whole government shutdown thing is going to be over sooner rather than later. It's mostly for show. Here's what people miss. When these shutdowns happen, the vast majority of government operations keep chugging along. Not everyone gets that. Which is why I think calling it a government shutdown is actually kind of a bad name for what's happening. Look, some stuff does close down, national parks for instance. And yeah, people get furloughed, which is genuinely rough if that's you. But here's the thing. The government machinery keeps turning. They'll pause operations on certain fronts, right? Like data releases The SEC goes dark during these periods. That means no movement on stuff like XRP ETF approvals, just as an example. I'm not pretending this doesn't have real world impact. It does. But let's be real. It's mostly political theater. This dance plays out roughly every couple years, give or take. And then what happens? Money flows again, compromises get struck, everybody moves on. So if you're anxiously watching for something to happen, take a breath. This gets figured out every single time. The Kobeissi letter just put out something really interesting. They're saying breaking the odds of 2 more interest rate cuts in 2025 surged to a record high 85%. As the data blackout continues, labor market deteriorates, and CPI comes in cooler than expected, the Fed must cut rates. There is no other option. And they pulled this straight from Kalshi, which is basically where people bet on these things. But here's where it gets even better. The actual quote says, breaking odds of 3 rate cuts in 2025 reach an all-time high of 85%. Now listen, I don't care if you think this prediction is spot on or completely off base. The market is eating this up. They're treating it like Christmas morning. No debate about it. So what does this mean for us? Well, we're probably looking at 1 cut happening this month, then boom, another one drops in December. Quick note though, November is basically a dead zone because guess what? No FOMC meeting on the calendar. So yeah, November's off the table completely for any rate action. This is another post from the Kobeissi letter. Breaking, the S&P 500 officially breaks above 6,800 for the first time in history, now up over plus 40% since the April 2025 bottom. The S&P 500 is now added $17 trillion of market cap in 6 months. Okay, folks, can we just talk about this for a second? That is absolutely massive. We're talking about traditional markets, legacy finance, putting up a 40% gain in, 6 months? Actually closer to half a year. The S&P 500 just ripped 40%. And remember, that whole rally started from the April 7th bottom. You remember that, right? The tariff panic, everyone was losing their minds. But here's the thing, and I said this at the time, whether you liked the approach or not, President Trump was using those tariffs as leverage, pure negotiation tactics, a scare tactic, if you want to call it that. Come on, there was never a reality where he was actually going to slap tariffs on everyone and tank the entire global economy. That was never the plan. He comes out aggressive, rattles some cages, gets everyone to the table, and then boom, we land on something way more reasonable. That's literally his playbook. He does this every time. Which is exactly why a few weeks back, when we saw that absolutely brutal crypto liquidation, I mean, we're talking $20 billion wiped out, the biggest liquidation event in crypto history, markets just cratering. So I'm over here watching all this unfold, and I had to jump in and say something to you guys. The crypto market went haywire. Complete overreaction. It's like nobody bothered to think for 2 seconds. Now look, I'm not saying the leverage wipeout wasn't real, because it absolutely was. You've got stop losses triggering left and right, then it's just dominoes falling, one after another, that whole chain reaction thing. Yeah, that definitely played a role. But what really got me was watching people just straight up panic sell. I'm literally asking myself, did everyone forget how this works? Has nobody been paying attention? This is strategy. This is calculated positioning. Just give it a minute. Something's going to get worked out behind the scenes. You really think a full 100% tariff on China stacked on everything already there was ever on the table? That wild report everyone was freaking out about? Come on, never materializing, folks. Zero chance. What if it's all about the business cycle? So there's this post from Joe Burnett that caught my eye. He's talking about the business cycle. Now, this is a metric that's been weirdly accurate at calling Bitcoin tops. Every time in history the business cycle reaches its peak, Bitcoin does too. And when Bitcoin moves, everything else in crypto follows along. But here's what's wild. That business cycle indicator still hasn't flipped green yet. All right, so Julian Biddle just threw up this chart, the one you're staring at right now, and he's teaming up with Raoul Pal, TechDev, and a couple other heavy hitters to make this case. They're claiming we're literally watching the cycle morph right before our eyes. Here's their logic. Debt refinancing used to run on a 4-year clock, which gave us that predictable 4-year crypto rhythm everyone's used to. But now, it's stretched to 5 years. What changed? all those pandemic stimulus measures and policy moves. That chaos basically yanked the timeline forward. The result? They're calling for the business cycle to top out somewhere in 2026. Which means, if their read is accurate, Bitcoin, every crypto asset, the whole digital asset universe, all of it peaks in 2026. That's their call. Whether they nail it or not, time will tell. But let's talk about what's actually undeniable here. The correlation exists. Full stop. What you're looking at with ISM data, this is the heartbeat of the business cycle. This chart reaches back to 1998, tracking how the Russell 2000 small caps dance with the broader economy. We're looking at 27 years of historical movement. See how tight that relationship is? This isn't noise. Almost 3 decades of proof sitting right there. You don't accidentally get patterns like that. And another thing we know beyond any doubt, whenever the Russell 2000 catches fire, altcoins light up right behind it. That relationship has held up consistently. So if you don't think the business cycle is suddenly going to rewrite the rules, what's your take on where this goes? Because honestly, it would be pretty strange if this one time everything just decided to behave differently, right? So that's exactly why the whole argument from Julian Biddle, Raoul Pal, and TechDev really grabs my attention. Do I know with 100% certainty they've cracked the code? Number. And guess what? They don't either. But what they're doing is laying out their conviction for you, showing you what they think is most likely to happen. And honestly, I respect that approach. Their explanation actually makes sense when you think about it. This is what's been driving the timing we've witnessed all along. It simply is. No other way to put it. And that's actually encouraging. Here's the key insight. If this cycle extends into 2026, that doesn't mean this time is different. It means it's exactly the same, because the business cycle is the measuring stick we should be watching. That plus global liquidity, those are your 2 big indicators for figuring out when the peak is coming. So if we roll into 2026, it's not some weird anomaly. Sure, you could point out the timing looks different compared to past cycles, but hold on. What's actually creating that timing? That's the real question. The underlying forces shaping when things happen, that's what you need to focus on, not just calendar dates sitting there by themselves. There are specific drivers pushing the timeline one way or another. Those fundamental drivers, they haven't changed, which is why Julian Biddle's response was just 2 words. It is. Because remember, Joe Burnett asked the question, what if the business cycle is the whole story? Julian's answer? It is. And then he dropped the data. Pretty tough to argue with that evidence. Ryan Dietrich from Carson Group just threw out some data that's pretty eye-opening. He's their chief market strategist, and he's been digging through S&P 500 patterns that most people miss. So here's the setup. He mapped out what typically unfolds after the S&P rockets past 20% in a year. Well, last year we nailed it. Came in around 23%. That's not your everyday occurrence, but it happened. What Ryan's displaying is the roadmap for what usually comes next after one of these massive years. And that's our current position. Ryan posted this observation. Q1 weakness is perfectly normal after a 20% year. This is one reason we remained overweight equities when others were telling you a recession was coming. What is also common? A big end-of-year rally starting right about now. The moment you see his visual, the whole thing clicks into place. Look at late October on that chart. Notice how it launches skyward? Just look. If your eyes work at all, you can't possibly miss this spike. It's screaming at you. And we're talking about data stretching back to 1950. So riddle me this. If the S&P 500's trajectory points upward, why assume crypto's already peaked? Nobody's claiming we can see the future perfectly, but odds matter. History echoes through time in predictable ways. Humans facing similar circumstances, they respond identically. Hardwired reflexes, consistent behavioral loops. Give me enough historical examples and human behavior becomes pretty predictable. Lean into those patterns and you'll land on the winning side way more than you miss. When current situations look almost identical to past ones, expecting a similar payoff isn't wishful thinking, it's logical. That's exactly why I'm calling for an upswing. We haven't seen the top, not remotely. Will there eventually be one? Of course. I'm not delusional about markets only going one direction forever. There's definitely a moment coming when alarm bells ring, when things get frothy and overextended, when every piece of data you're staring at tells you we've crossed into sketchy territory. But that moment isn't now. I'm not seeing any of those red flags. Jump on CoinMarketCap. They watch 30 different markers that historically catch crypto peaks before they happen. Guess how many are flashing warnings? Literally 0. Not 1 out of 30. So what's the theory here? They randomly stopped functioning? They had a perfect track record through previous cycles, but somehow they're obsolete now? Give me a break. Come on. That's not the direction my money's going. Doesn't pass the common sense test. Ryan Dietrich dropped this another gem recently. He pointed out 2 Fridays ago, stocks fell 3% on talks that Trump/Xi, that's the Chinese president, of course, wouldn't meet. Last Friday, the VIX soared to nearly 29 on fears about cockroaches, BDCs, and regional banks. October's job is to scare investors out of their positions before the year-end rally. Mission accomplished. Guy basically called it perfectly. But here's what's wild. Everyone's panicking while we're sitting near record highs. Let me ask you something. How many times have you watched markets climb toward the absolute top while people are losing their minds with worry? Seriously, when? Almost never happens. Like, that's just not how this works. So are we supposed to join the panic party right now? Personally, I'm not buying it. The market seems to disagree with me though. Time will tell, I guess. But look, this whole vibe, completely different from actual market peaks. Go back through history. Take crypto if you want a recent example. Real tops look nothing like this. Markets die when everyone's popping champagne and swearing prices only go one direction. Not when people are running around like their hair's on fire. The math just isn't mathing here. Chart analyst Tony Severino just put out a post and he's like, not going to lie, the S&P 500 looks like it's going to turn that blow off top idea into reality. 7 days left to close like this or better. I mean, talk about a statement. And then there's this other analyst jumping in and their take is basically, oh yeah, we're going to rocket higher. It's pretty much guaranteed at this point, folks. So I've got this fascinating post here from On-Chain Analytics at Sentiment. Now we're jumping into some XRP territory, so bear with me on this one. What he's basically pointing out is retailers are pessimistic on crypto heading into the weekend, comparing cryptocurrency discussions on social media containing lower or below to be blue or red, higher or above. The pattern implies a price rise is more probable because the crowd is a contrarian signal. You know what? That observation hits different because it's actually true. And if you look around, fear's got this market in a chokehold. Let me give this another shot with a completely different vibe. So I'm scrolling through my feed and boom, Charting Guy drops this absolute bomb of a post. And man, he might be cooking here. He wrote, I have never seen a bear market where the market gives you so long to get out of your bags near highs. Stocks constantly hit new all-time highs. Top 5 cryptos are 1 fib level away from price discovery. Bitcoin dominance flipping bearish, higher time frame. Fed flipping to easing. These points hit different when you really break them down. Because listen, if this was genuinely game over, if you pull up the historical data from every previous cycle we've been through, what do you notice? The second crypto reached its absolute ceiling, things went south immediately. No warning, no second chances. We're talking prices getting demolished in rapid succession. Which brings me to this. Why in the world are we sitting here in a supposed bear market with literal months to pack up and leave? Better yet, zoom in on Bitcoin's latest peak around $126,000. That happened when exactly? Must be over a month in the rearview mirror now. The exact date escapes me at the moment, but yeah, it's been a hot minute. Why are we getting this ridiculous amount of breathing room to secure profits and bail? Show me another cycle where that happened. You can't. This pattern breaks the mold completely. So listen, right now stocks are absolutely obliterating records at all-time highs. And the top 5 cryptos, they're basically flirting with price discovery territory. Here's what's interesting though. Bitcoin dominance is still holding strong, hasn't completely collapsed yet. But you know what's happened in every single past cycle? It eventually dumps. And we're seeing Bitcoin dominance starting to flip bearish right now, which is genuinely exciting news. What's fascinating is Bitcoin can still pump in price even as dominance weakens. Then there's the whole easing conversation happening. I mean, let's wait and see if we actually get real easing playing out. But when we talk about rates specifically, that picture is already pretty clear. One rate cut's already in the books, and we're looking at 2 more coming down the pipeline before year end, practically set in stone. I'm just not convinced by this narrative that we're marching into bear market conditions. That's truly how I see things. It just doesn't compute for me that we're walking into a bear market situation here. I gotta show you what Alex Wassi just posted. This guy's a chart analyst with serious credibility. 197,000 followers on X tracking his every move. He's analyzing altcoins versus Ethereum, you know, the alts to ETH chart. And here's what he drops. Alts have never been this oversold in crypto history yet. Not in 2021, not in 2023, not in 2024. Every time it ends the same, up only. Will this time be different? Okay, so my thoughts. Will this time be any different? I seriously doubt it, guys. I'm expecting alts to just launch into orbit, and XRP is sitting right there ready to catch one of the biggest waves in this whole move. That's where my head's at right now. Mustache, another chart analyst, just dropped something pretty interesting. He's tracking the total 3 chart, basically everything in crypto except Bitcoin and Ethereum, and he's saying total 3 is holding one of the most important levels ever in crypto. Twitter is behaving as if we were in a bear market. Altcoins equal higher. Let me show you what's got him excited. You see this line right here, this crucial support zone that actually used to act as a resistance? That's the all-time high from 2021 for total 3. Price broke through it, climbed up, and now it's coming back to retest that same level as support. The key thing, we're still sitting above it. That's why Mustache is pointing out, hey everyone, we're holding this zone beautifully, which means one direction from here. Up. Tridentless Crypto Wizard just dropped something interesting. He's pulled up the total crypto market cap chart, but wait, he's done something smart here. He stripped out the top 10 coins to show us what the rest of the market's actually doing. Then he throws down this challenge. Don't you see? Bears, I would consider getting an eye test. We've seen this structure before, and others right before a parabolic explosion upside, even the liquidation occurred. Crisis springs opportunity to those who have conviction. I mean, come on, he's nailed it. His whole point? This isn't some mystery. The setup unfolding right now is basically a replay of what we witnessed in previous cycles. That massive rally everyone keeps asking about? Yeah, it's brewing. Here's the thing. When history keeps repeating the same patterns over and over, we'd be foolish not to see where this is headed next. So Mikey Bull Crypto, he's a chart analyst, just dropped his XRP USD analysis, and you need to hear what he's calling. XRP is in preparation for the final expansion phase. This cycle, the red band target stands at $7, and if it extends, that should be $11 to $15. What's wild about Mikey is he's actually playing it safe compared to other XRP analysts I watch. He's leaving room for doubt. Maybe we don't quite crack $10. But at the same time, he's saying $15 isn't off the table. There's a real path to get there. Now look, price predictions, that's not my game. I've stayed away from that forever, and I'm not changing course now. I don't read charts like these guys do, so why would I pretend I can call numbers? Makes no sense. But let's be real here. Conviction is a different story. I've got mine, you've got yours. Ask yourself this. Would I be sitting on XRP right now if I thought it was going nowhere? Of course not. You don't need fancy chart skills to grasp that logic. Do I think XRP climbs higher? Absolutely, this cycle included. And when these analysts start throwing around double-digit targets, am I sitting here thinking they've lost the plot? Not even close. Maybe it plays out, maybe it doesn't. Your guess is as good as mine. But the underlying concept, it's grounded in reality. That's not up for debate, not even a little bit. Ether Nacional chart analyst just threw up this side-by-side comparison of XRP that's honestly pretty striking. You've got 2017 sitting on the left, 2025 on the right, and here's his take. XRP history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. After its major trend breakout in 2017, XRP initiated a 2-stage parabolic run. Wave first, followed by reaccumulation, and then wave second. Today, the picture looks surprisingly similar. Some cycles don't just repeat. They are reborn. Look, this observation keeps popping up across different analysts lately, and I'm going to keep echoing it on my channel because honestly, I've been screaming about this for years before we even got to this cycle. And here's the thing, you don't have to be some chart reading wizard to connect these dots. History plays the same tune on a different day. That's literally what happens. Jump back to 2017. You see that rocket ship moment upward, right? Then everything shifts sideways. You enter this limbo phase, this consolidation stretch where price just hangs out and everyone's loading up. Then, and this is the critical part, that second surge hits. And listen, that second wave absolutely obliterates the first one in terms of raw dollar appreciation. We're talking magnitudes bigger in actual price growth. So when I keep repeating that double-digit targets make complete sense, that's why. It's not Fantasyland, it's reading the playbook from last time. So here's what happened. We rocketed from 49 cents all the way to $3.65. Now, if you're one of those people saying the first pump really maxed out at $3.40 in January, fine, I hear you. Doesn't matter which number you pick though, that's still a wild ride. Absolutely crushing it. But you want to know what's really interesting? When you dig into history and look at actual dollar movements, that second pump, it blows the first one out of the water. And we're still waiting on that second wave. So let's run this scenario. If the first move gave us about $3 in gains from our starting point, where does this take us next? Are we looking at a $6 jump? Could it be $7 or even $8? Your guess is as good as mine. Here's what I know for sure though. None of those targets are ridiculous. There's plenty of money sloshing around globally to fuel this thing, and assuming we actually get a proper alt season, crypto should have more than enough firepower to make it happen. It'd actually be kind of bizarre if it didn't play out that way. So I threw up that post and ChartNerd grabbed it and shared it too. Here's what ChartNerd said. XRP is currently in accumulation. Once it breaks, double digits are more than likely great outlook. So there's another voice saying the same thing, and this whole outlook is built on patterns we've already watched unfold in the past. If this ends up happening, it shouldn't surprise anyone. Even if we're stuck in some extended cycle scenario and grinding through this accumulation phase for longer than expected, okay, no big deal. There's actual logic supporting that view if you're paying attention to what Rob Hall and Julian Vittler, tech dev, have been breaking down. And you know what? They might be spot on. Their argument makes sense, at the very least. ChartNerd also mentioned this. XRP must break $2.60 before the race back towards all-time highs can begin. $2.20 per $2 remains the support zone. So let's hope we stay above those levels. Obviously, if the whole market takes a nosedive, XRP isn't going to magically float above it all. But that's the situation. Those are the price points ChartNerd thinks matter most right now. So check this out. Cryptolica, the chart guy, is back at it again with another post. And look, this dude is like a broken record, but in the best way possible. He just keeps hammering the same message home. I'm throwing this up on the screen because honestly, it's kind of impressive how he hasn't even flinched despite everything that's been happening in the market lately. While everyone else is second guessing themselves, he's over here doubling down. His prediction, XRP is gonna rocket to at least $10 during this cycle. Yeah, you heard that right. $10 and beyond. Chart analyst Javon Marks here says, due to the extreme similarities in XRP's price structure to a previous bull run, $9.90 looks to be up next for prices to push, and they may not stop there. That's an over 309% increase from here. Buckle up. Okay, so we're dancing around that $10 threshold according to his analysis. Here's where my radar goes up though. Marks is lining up what we're seeing today with this brief pullback during XRP's early moonshot. Look, I'm going to level with you. I don't claim to be some charting wizard, but that matching just feels forced to me. What actually jumps out? You've got this wild initial rocket ride followed by half a year of just nothing. Sideways city. That's the phase I believe we're living through right now. Then comes that final knockout punch upward. If Marks hits the bullseye on this one, you're potentially watching two more explosive waves coming down the pipeline. Do I personally see that unfolding? Honestly, I have my doubts. But here's my philosophy. I'd rather put varying technical perspectives in front of you from serious XRP analysts than keep you in an echo chamber. And let's be real here. Marks earns some credibility by correctly forecasting XRP's breakout during this cycle when others completely missed the boat. But I've got a hunch we're actually sitting right here. You see where my mouse is hovering. This looks a lot like that 6-month build-up phase he spotted back in 2017, right before things went absolutely crazy to the upside. Now check this out. There's this chart analyst, Steph His Crypto, and he says the next wave higher for XRP will be epic. Look at this. He's targeting this massive final push all the way up to $10. But hold on, let me clarify something important here. Based on the pattern he's mapping out on your screen, $10 isn't necessarily the ceiling. He actually thinks XRP could rocket beyond $30 in this particular market cycle. So yeah, he's definitely on the bullish end compared to most analysts I keep tabs on. Then you've got this Postman chart analyst, Ali Martinez, dropping this gem. TD sequential flashes a buy signal on XRP. Looks like the rebound is about to begin. More bullish vibes coming through loud and clear. And oh man, this one never gets old. Chart analyst CW posted this literally hours ago this morning. XRP liquidated most of its short positions. Yep, classic. That tracks perfectly. And I'm really digging this response. There's a user called XFinanceBull who chimed in and said, "That's what happens when you bet against utility burned." Exactly. Who in their right mind shorts one of the most practical cryptos to ever exist? That's just a terrible move. Listen, all you need to do is hold your spot position and you could see some serious jaw-dropping gains. But people refuse to take that simple route. Why? Because they're hooked on the thrill, plain and simple. That's my take on it anyway. It's a compulsion thing. Anyway, moving on, the final leg up is on its way. We're talking potential double-digit movements for XRP. If that plays out, I wouldn't be shocked at all. To me, that's totally within the realm of possibility. And we're still in the early chapters of this story. Multiple indicators are lining up beautifully. What's unfolding at the macro level is genuinely exciting to watch. So here's my stance. If those few analysts I keep tabs on are right about some near-term dip, whatever, I can handle that. So hey, if this thing actually unfolds, keep your composure, but it's definitely not a done deal yet. And check it out, even if we do get that move, the foundation holds up just fine. Think about it. These same market watchers predicting a possible quick downturn, they're still saying we're headed up when you zoom out. And honestly, the history books back that up as the more likely scenario anyway. So why would you think otherwise, you know? But hold on, I need to say this. I'm not a financial advisor at all. Do not make any buy or sell decisions based on my words here. That would be an incredibly unwise thing to do. Talk to you in the next one.